My name is Arya Quinn, and if you ask my family, I was born reliable. That reputation didn't arrive overnight. It started the year our parents split. I was 12, my sister Lena was 7, and Mom stitched together double shifts while I learned how to pack lunches and sign reading logs. On Friday nights, my classmates went to games. I checked fractions, reheated soup, and braided hair before bedtime. When senior year came, an acceptance letter from a design institute 3 hours away felt like sunlight through a window. I folded it shut. Just a year or two, Mom said I was tired but grateful. 1 year bled into many. I took community college classes at night and a job at a local print shop in the day learning Pantone swatches and paper weights while watching other people's flyers celebrate the futures I'd deferred. Lena Blossom sleepovers club photos, the loud orbit of a girl people wanted to say yes to. Little things began to tilt. The year I turned 21, my cake became a last-minute grocery cupcake. Lena's piano recital ran long. Dad bought her the new tablet for school. I got a gas card and a pat on the shoulder. "You're so responsible, Arya." Responsibility sounded a lot like invisibility. 2 years ago, Adrian Cole stepped into Lena's life with a pressed shirt and an easy grin. 33 Finance, always between deals. He spoke in slogans, corner office exclusive reservations, friends in the right places. When I suggested meeting him for lunch near his building, he laughed it off. Security's a nightmare. He liked Lena in muted colors, said her brights distracted from her elegance. She stopped posting photos without checking with him first. Our Friday movie nights vanished under the banner of saving for our future. Little seams started to split. I saw Adrian at a bistro one afternoon, leaning close to a woman whose hand stayed on his sleeve longer than hello. "Client," he said later, smooth as glass. Mom called him polished. Dad approved of the wine talk. I heard another thing at a backyard barbecue. Adrian's voice low behind the hedges. "Shift the accounts before the paperwork. No one will notice." Maybe he was talking business. Maybe. When I raised concerns, Lena flushed with embarrassment and then anger. "Why can't you be happy for me?" she asked, and our parents, eager for peace, nodded in chorus. A week later, she canceled a cake tasting we'd planned since we were kids. "Adrian says small is better," she texted. Also, "You're a bit intense." I sketched notes in the margins of my day planner like a designer marking proof's red flag. Redder. Loudest. I didn't know yet how quickly the page would tear or how far I'd go to find the off switch. The proposal happened on a windswept overlook above the river, all curated spontaneity fairy lights and jars of photographer hiking by, and a ring that caught the last sliver of sun. Adrian Cole went down on one knee. Lena swayed as if a string had been tugged inside her chest. Everyone else clapped on cue. I clapped too. Whatever I felt about him could wait. I told myself. I could be the older sister who arrived with a toolkit instead of a lecture. For a while it worked. I built spreadsheets and mood boards. Lena pinned peonies and chiffon. We auditioned venues until we found Cypress Hollow Conservatory glass walls, a clipped lawn, and a willow that skimmed the pond like a paintbrush. "You're my anchor," Lena whispered when we left the deposit. It felt like being welcomed back into a club I'd always paid dues to, but never quite belonged in. Then Sloane Hart appeared. Sloane was introduced as an old college friend with a knack for events. She wore monochrome suits and a perfume that announced her before she turned the corner. In our first planning session, she listened for 5 minutes, then redrew everything. "Clean lines, fewer pastels, more intention," she said, sweeping my color palette aside. To Lena, "Let me take a few tasks off your sister's plate." She looks exhausted. The smile she sent me was a gift-wrapped emotion. After Sloane came, Adrian suddenly invested in details he'd previously waved away. Now he had opinions about the band, something with horns, not kitsch, the linens, ivory, not cream, the guest list, smaller, curated, and oddly the budget, don't fuss. I'll move things around. Sloane and Adrian began to share looks over the rims of their glasses, a private thread of conversation passing between them like a laser pointer we couldn't see. My exclusion arrived as an accumulation of skipped steps. The cake tasting was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon. "We assumed you had work," Sloane texted, as if assumption were courtesy. The photographer meeting was bumped up. I learned of it in an email recap. The florist asked me to confirm a style board I hadn't seen. When I protested, Lana blinked fast and said she thought Sloan was keeping everyone in the loop. "I'm sorry." "Things got busy," she said, guilty for exactly 6 seconds before Sloan swept her onward. We found out my official demotion in a room that smelled like fresh glue and floral foam. The venue coordinator scanned her clipboard. Maid of honor, Sloan Hart. Bridesmaids, Aria, Kelsey, Mia. She looked up, smile frozen. My stomach did a slow roll. Lena's hand found the edge of her chair and pinched. Sloan, unbothered, touched my elbow as if to steady me. "It's purely logistical," she said. "I'm already managing vendors. You'll still be vital sentimentally." I excused myself to the restroom and stood at the sink long enough for the automatic faucet to give up. In the mirror, my expression had been sanded down until it barely showed grain. I knew how this worked. If I made a scene, I'd confirm a narrative. If I swallowed it, I'd be praised for my grace. So I swallowed, and we continued. That night, I went to Launa's to pick up a ribbon swatch I'd left in her tote. The apartment door was ajar. Voices unspooled from the kitchen. I should have knocked. Instead, I froze at the threshold of a conversation I was not meant to hear. "Accounts are staged," Adrian said, calm. "Once the vows are done, transfers look clean. No questions." And the sister Sloane's voice lower, a scrape of steel. "She isn't sold." Adrian laughed light and dismissive. "Aria is loud only in diaries. She does not escalate. By the time she puzzles anything out, we'll be in a different chapter." My throat clicked. I took one step back, then another, then a third, and left without the ribbon. On the sidewalk, I tasted the nick of something sharp on my tongue. Fear or clarity, it was hard to tell. At home, I did what I should have done months earlier. I looked Adrian up beyond polished bios and the Meet Our Team page with photos taken against greenery. There were small claims cases, a bankruptcy from a few years back, a complaint about investment misrepresentation that died when the complainant stopped returning calls. The edges didn't form a picture, but they formed a smell, wet paper mildew cover-up. I asked Lena to meet me for coffee. I arrived early with a folder of printouts, highlighter marks like warnings on a flood map. When she sat down, her eyes were already glossy with offense. "Please, just listen," I said, thumb tapping against the manila tab. "There are things that don't line up. I'm worried for you." She made it 20 seconds before cutting in. "You can't stand that I'm happy," she said, voice thin and pitched to Carrie. "Adrian told me you do this, turn it into a project you can fix." The folder pressed into my palms like a bruise. "I'm not a project," she added, "and I don't need your permission to marry him." "It isn't permission," I said, but the conversation had already collapsed. She stood, knocked her chair with her knee, and left the cafe on a gust that smelled like baked sugar and humiliation. By dinner, my parents had a summary that polished my concern until it gleamed like malice. "We raised you to be supportive," my mother said over the phone, weary and righteous at once. "Don't make this about you." My father's contribution was brisk. "Not everyone lands a partner like Adrian. Be happy for your sister." A week later, the text arrived neutral wording that could have been copied from a template. "For budget and harmony, we're streamlining the guest count. Regretfully, we can't include you. Please send your dress to Sloan for returns." I read it 3 times. The 4th time, the letters blurred into a single gleaming object, a key turning in a lock from the outside. I called Lena, straight to voicemail. I called my mother. She already knew. Tensions were getting high, she said. "This way there won't be drama." There was drama anyway, just repackaged for public consumption. On social media, a photo carousel appeared Lena at a final fitting with my wedding family. Comments bloomed like algae. Someone wrote that it was so gracious of Aria to step back for her sister's peace. That imaginative revision, my choice, was the insult that did not even bother to hide. The insult might have been survivable if it had not been joined by confirmation of choreography. Because later that afternoon, while dropping a charger at my parents' house, I glimpsed their tablet lighting with a family thread I didn't know existed. My mother, my father Lena, and Adrian. I didn't read far. I read far enough. "Adrian, we should consider minimizing Aria's involvement for the sake of Lena's mental health. She elevates stress. Mother, she's family." Adrian, exactly why a clean boundary is kindest. We want Lena calm. Confrontation will escalate. Father, we could at least talk to her. Adrian, after the honeymoon. Absolutely. One thing at a time. The thread became logistics. The sentence clean boundary sat on the screen like a sanitized blade. I went home and waited for the old script to pick me up by the scruff cry apologize, appease, volunteer more labor as penance. Instead, I felt still, not numb, clarified. The life I'd curated around everyone else's needs had given me a single muscle endurance. But endurance can be turned like a tool toward retreat. I pulled up my flight confirmation, the non-refundable ticket to the destination wedding, and the hotel I had prepaid for because responsible people prepay. The airline allowed changes for a fee. I typed DPS into the destination field. Bali had been a daydream in a playlist of daydreams, jungled terraces, a horizon that breathed. The fare difference plus the change penalty equaled roughly what I'd budgeted for a wedding gift. I stared at the math until the number stopped moving. This is impulsive, I thought. It is not something steady or countered. It is a different kind of planning. I moved money, clicked confirm, and set a calendar reminder to water my plants, then texted my neighbor to do it for me instead. I placed the chiffon dress I would not wear in a box and sent it to Sloane's office with signature required. I wrote a short email to my parents. I'll be traveling internationally for a week and may be out of contact. I'm safe. I did not name the country. They could imagine a business thing if that was gentler on their ideas about me. The last object on my list was my phone. The device had become an IV drip for other people's preferences. I toggled off notifications until the home screen looked like a tiny quiet sea. Then I powered it down. Not airplane mode off. 48 hours, I promised myself. 2 nights to let the sediment sink. At the airport, I arrived early out of habit, without the usual stream of messages time-stacked differently. I watched families shuffle carry-ons and couples argue softly about snacks. I opened the sketch app I hadn't touched in months and drew the silhouette of a willow bending over a pond, then drew it again with a straighter spine. When my boarding group was called, I felt lighter and heavier at once, as if I had set down a suitcase and realized it had been filled with rocks. On the plane, the man across the aisle fell asleep before takeoff. The woman by the window read a paperback so intently that she didn't look up as drinks carts rattled by. I thought about Lena's dress, how we'd cried in the fitting room, not because of lace, but because we'd convinced ourselves the future was as crisp as a veil. I thought about Adrian and Sloane speaking in the kitchen, as if truth were a minor inconvenience. I thought about the word boundary stripped of corporate spin restored to something with bark and roots. When the wheels lifted, a pressure eased inside me. I did not know what would explode or collapse in my absence. For once, I was not going to stand in the blast radius to catch shrapnel with my hands. I slept poorly, but purely. I woke to a tray of breakfast items that looked like the idea of fruit and a sky so bright it hurt. We crossed water that stitched silver in every direction. Somewhere below was a city prepping a wedding without the person who used to fix things. Somewhere ahead was a place I had chosen because I wanted to be where no one expected me to show up with a solution. Customs. A ride with a driver who said, "Welcome first time," and smiled when I nodded. A small room with white sheets and a patio framed by tropical leaves. No agenda but the one I would draft in pencil. I unzipped my suitcase, lined my shoes like punctuation, and set my phone on the nightstand where it stayed a dark rectangle that Miracle did not hum. I made one promise before I showered and found dinner and slept again under a ceiling fan that whispered its own weather. When I turned the phone back on, I would not rush toward whatever waited. I would not build a bridge where someone else had dug a moat. If the story needed me, it could knock and state its name. The universe, like any storyteller, respects pacing. Mine, for the first time, was my own. The plane banked over water the color of a new leaf, and for the first time in months, my shoulders dropped away from my ears. Bali did not announce itself with grand gestures. It arrived as warmth on the skin incense at the edge of the road, and the easy smile of the driver who held my name on a placard like a small vote of confidence. First time, he asked, as we rolled past stone gates and shrines trimmed with checkered cloth. First time anywhere by myself, I admitted. He nodded, as if that made perfect sense. Then you will meet yourself. My room was a white square of quiet, crisp sheets, a fan that whispered a porch looking over a garden stitched with hibiscus. I set my phone on the nightstand, dark and inert, and felt the silence settle. Without the constant tug of alerts, hours stretched like unspooled ribbon. I swam. I ate when I was hungry, and I slept the kind of sleep that has no corners. Morning one began with yoga at sunrise, the ocean exhaling in time with breath. I didn't know I'd been keeping shallow. Breakfast was fruit I couldn't name, and coffee that tasted like the memory of chocolate. A woman from Melbourne taught a batik class in the afternoon, and when she praised the looseness of my lines, I almost said I didn't know how to be loose. Instead, I said thank you and let the wax run where it wanted. The second day carried the same lightness. I walked the beach at low tide, stopped to watch a ceremony spill out of a temple, and bought a handmade journal from a stall that felt like a small permissioned future. Each ordinary act seemed to sand away a layer I'd been wearing since I was 12, and someone told me I was the reliable one. I'd promised myself 48 hours with the phone off. I kept the promise. On the morning of day 3, I made tea, took the phone to the porch and pressed the button. The screen leapt alive with missed calls and messages, a surge of red badges that stacked and multiplied until they resembled a rash. My first thought was not the wedding. It was my parents. A bad fall, I thought. A hospital. I opened the newest message. Mom, call me the moment you see this. We need to know you're safe. Another 3 minutes later from my father kid. Whatever happened, we can talk. Just tell us you're okay. Things blew up. A text from Lena followed, stripped of punctuation and voice I know I don't deserve to ask, but please pick up, I need you. My mind lurched from a fear to confusion and back. I scrolled beneath the top layer, assembling a story from timestamps and tone. A bridesmaid Kelsey had written. Aria, are you hearing this? Adrian and Sloane disappeared. No ceremony. People are here. It's a disaster. An hour later, they took the envelopes from the card box. Is that even possible? There were photos, too. The conservatory doors with a sheet of paper taped inside. Due to unforeseen circumstances, today's event is canceled. A smear of comments below sympathy curdled into speculation. Someone wrote, didn't her sister step back because of drama? A reply, heard the fiancé ran off with the coordinator. Wild, if true. I sat very still, the phone warm in my hand. It felt obscene to be calm, but calmness was what arrived. The calls kept coming, old aunts, cousins, numbers I didn't recognize. When Mom finally got through, she cried my name like a life jacket. I'm all right, I said. Oh, thank God. We've tried for days. A breath. Aria, he's gone. Adrian. And that woman. They took the money. All of it. The deposits. The gifts. Lena's savings. Mom swallowed. She had a panic attack. The paramedics came. She's here. She keeps asking for you. I'm in Bali, I said the 2 syllables softer than the news they carried. Bali, she repeated, half disbelieving, half relieved to put me somewhere on a map. When can you fly home? I looked at the garden where a gecko practiced stillness on the wall. The old script snapped toward my mouth. I'll come now, but I kept it behind my teeth. My return flight is next week, I said. I need these days, Mom. Silence. Then in a smaller voice, we made a mess of things. We should have listened when you warned us. I did not trust myself with forgiveness, or with I told you so. How is Lena right now? Stunned. Humiliated. She won't sleep. Your father is making soup, like soup can fix fraud. A watery laugh. Aria, I'm sorry for the text. For all of it, Dave, she corrected herself. Adrian had us convinced you were stirring trouble. We wanted peace. We traded you for peace that wasn't real. I closed my eyes. Grief arrived oddly less for Adrian's betrayal than for how quickly the people I loved had accepted his narrative. I'll text her, I said. I'm here, just not there. After we hung up, I scrolled further back. A message from Mia Sloane bragged she had contingencies. Thought she was kidding. I'm sick. A private note from Sarah, one of the bridal party I'd introduced to Lena. For what it's worth, I'm sorry I believe the story that you stepped back. That came straight from Sloane. Lena had texted again. I know this is the exact shape of what you warned me about. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Then a minute later, as if catching herself, ignore me if you need. I deserve it. I typed and erased until the words were the right size for the moment. Me, I'm safe. I'm sorry you're in pain. I'm thinking of you. I need a few days to take care of myself. We'll talk when I'm home. No advice, no plan, no tools. A boundary, not a wall. The resort staff went on soft-footed with their day. Someone raked sand into careful lines. Someone else adjusted flowers in a bowl like intentions. I sat and watched the ocean arrange itself and thought about relief that arrives without triumph. I had been correct about Adrian. It did not feel like a victory. It felt like a diagnosis after months of symptoms, the kind that comes with prescriptions no one wants. In the afternoon, I joined a meditation class under a pavilion where the roof caught the sound of rain. The teacher spoke of attachment and aversion, two sides of the same grasping. "Open your hand," she said. "See what remains." When the session ended, she pressed a bit of sandalwood into my palm and smiled as if she'd seen the outline of my day. Evening brought the urge to doom scroll. I let myself read precisely 3 things: a brief news squib about alleged financial misconduct at a private event, a thread where distant relatives turned conjecture into entertainment, and an email from the venue coordinator describing what had to be done when a celebration abruptly became a crime scene. Then I set the phone down and went to dinner. On the way back to my room, I bumped into Anna, a 40-something from Seattle I'd met at the pool. She'd come to mark the end of a bad marriage. When she asked if I was okay, I told the outline and left the shading alone. She listened, then said, "The hardest part is not mistaking caretaking for love. You can love and still not fix." I thought of all the times I had mistaken emergency response for affection, the way I ran toward fires I hadn't started. "I'm practicing," I said. "Practicing is the only way," she said, and clinked her water bottle to mine like a toast to a future where practice becomes muscle. The next morning, I made rules for my phone: check messages twice, once with tea, once before bed. No live feeds, no rumor bathing, no martyrdom. I told my parents I would text at those times and asked them kindly to save updates for the windows. My father replied with a thumbs up, and then a beat later, "Proud of you." It was the kind of message that would have made me cry a year ago. It made me smile now, small and honest. Between alerts, I returned to the island. I learned to balance on a paddleboard long enough to trust my legs. I ate grilled fish with lime and listened to a trio play songs I didn't know the words to and hummed anyway. In a tiny shop, I bought paints and a slim brush and tried to learn how to record greens I had never seen before. By the second evening, the story back home had congealed into a script I could understand without reading every line: lawyers, statements, the unraveling of logistics that had seemed so secure. What shifted in me was not the content of the updates, it was my position in relation to them. I was not the operator on duty. I was Aria Quinn in a room by the sea, letting the tide mark time. Just before sleep, Lena wrote again. This time the words were steadier. "I don't need you to solve it. I just need you to know I'm sorry I chose his version of you over the real one. Take your time. If there's a door later, I'll knock." I stared at the screen until the letters softened, then typed, "Thank you for saying that." "I hear you." I set the phone face down and turned out the light. The fan shaped the air into something gentle. A gecko clicked on the wall. Outside, the sea rearranged its thinking. Inside, so did I. I had come to Bali believing I was escaping a scene. In truth, I had stepped into intermission, the only place in a story where you're allowed to breathe, to choose a different seat, to decide whether you will clap for the second act. Whatever waited when I flew home would still be there in a week. The bills, the forms, the conversations no one wants recorded. But I would meet them with a spine I hadn't had when I boarded the plane. Not harder exactly. Aligned. On my last check of the night, I sent 3 messages, one to Mom. "Sleep if you can, drink water," one to Dad, "thank you for the soup report," and one to myself in the new journal I'd started, "Boundary kept today. Keep keeping." Then I slept again. Not because everything was okay, but because finally I was. I didn't rush home. After the flight back, I let my suitcase lean against the wall and spent a day doing ordinary things: laundry, groceries, watering the snake plant. Then I texted my parents and Lena, "I'm ready to meet tonight." We sat in my parents' living room. Lena perched on the sofa's edge, hands knotted. My mother inhaled to apologize for everyone at once. My father touched her arm. "Let her speak," he said. "I love you," I began, "and I'm not the family emergency department anymore." No more last-minute favors framed as duty. No more dismissing concerns as jealousy. Ask, don't assume. If I say no, it's capacity, not betrayal. I'm sorry, Lena said. He rewrote my world until you felt like the villain. I let him. That's on me. I've started therapy. I'm canceling cards, freezing reports, and sitting with the shame instead of handing it to you. I don't want fixes. I want the truth. It wasn't absolution, but it was adult. My mother cried the kind of tears that arrive late. My father, never long on speeches managed, will ask not a sign. The aftermath unspooled for weeks. Banks police the accounting of what vanished besides money. Some relatives recast themselves as prophets. Others apologize for believing a prettier story. I didn't curate perceptions. The only narrative I needed to manage was my own. 2 months later, I handed in notice at the print shop. Reliability had paid my rent. It had also kept my life too small. I registered a domain, posted a portfolio, and said yes to branding work. The first contract came from an address I knew by heart, subject flower and thread. From Lena, she'd taken a job at a neighborhood bakery while rebuilding savings. The owner offered a partnership if she could grow the business. No pity, hire her email read. I want your eye, not your history. We signed a scope like two professionals. I sent mood boards and type. She sent revision notes without emojis. During check-ins, we talked kerning and shelf talkers, not trauma. When the signage went up, cream on slate, a quiet serif that felt like steadiness, Lena texted a photo and nothing else. It was enough. At home, I kept promises to myself, small and measurable Sunday mornings with a sketchbook. Timers that shut down work before I did. No volunteering for chores. When Mom slipped and asked for a quick favor that was neither quick nor a favor, I said not today, and nobody died. Sometimes I think about the message that removed me from the guest list. It felt like a trap door then. Now it reads like a detour sign, plain necessary, pointing away from a bridge that was never safe. I carry the beach in my pocket, the tide negotiating with stone, the reminder that erosion is only another word for change. On a soft evening, months later, Lena and I passed the bakery as the last customers left. She stopped at the window, the logo reflected over her shoulder. I don't know how to be your sister without needing you, she said. Maybe we start by being each other's witness, I said. Less rescuing, more seeing. We stood until the lights clicked off. Then we went for tea, 2 people learning a new choreography. I looked at my phone because I wanted to, not because I was on call, and felt something settle, yes, a spine, but also a softness with room for both of us. I'm not a cautionary tale. I'm a redesign, and this time the guidelines are mine. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.